Now, there are different types of data that we're going to be dealing with when we deal with variables in JavaScript. And by types of data, I mean to say that there are things like, for instance, the age of a person versus the name of a person. We can kind of inherently see that these are two different types of data. The age of a person deals with numbers, and the name of a person deals with a string of characters. And in JavaScript, there are several types of data that we care about that are broken into two major categories. The first category are called primitive data types, and the second category are called composite data types. We're first going to look at primitive data types, and there are three types of primitive data types in JavaScript. They are Booleans, numbers, and strings. In this video, we're going to pay attention to Boolean data types, and we'll take a look at Boolean data types through an example. And so here I've created a variable, I've declared a variable called example Boolean, and I've assigned the value true to that variable. So again, remember what we're doing here. This declaration sets aside some bits in order to store whatever data we want to assign to those bits. So in this case, I've set aside some bits for this example Boolean variable, and I've just assigned the value true to those bits. So in effect, it just sets one bit to the value, to the number 1. And then I go ahead and print out or log this example Boolean variable to our console. Of course, I could also assign the value false to this example Boolean variable. And here, notice that I don't redeclare this variable example Boolean because I already declared it up here. So in this statement, I've initialized my variable, and then in this statement, I assign a new value to my variable that's already been declared. Then I just log it back out to the console. So we can see that Boolean variables can either be true or false. Now what's cool is that JavaScript doesn't force us to specify that this is a Boolean variable. You may recall in the last video when we talked about variable initialization how we still use the same keyword var to declare a variable that may store strings or other things. So JavaScript is not what's called type safe. It doesn't force us to always use the same type of data for a given variable that we declare at the beginning of using that variable. Instead, we can mix and mash different data types to a given variable. So that's one thing to pay attention to, but in JavaScript, it really abstracts that from us, so we don't have to care about it too much, but it's important to understand that Boolean data types are either true or false. So let's go to the browser to see how this prints out in our console. And just as we'd expect, the first time that we log the example Boolean variable to the console, it prints true, and the second time it logs false. And we can see the corresponding lines in our app.js file where these log statements occur. So that's great, it's working exactly as we'd hoped. Next, let's move on to number data types.